For most of my life, I have been consumed by a detrimental level of unconfidence and a lack of self belief. But it was only a few years ago until I learned how to defeat this unconfidence and lack of self belief. For example, I was able to graduate a semester early with 2 science degrees in high level science. That is some of the hardest material in a lot of colleges, and build my dream physique all at the same time. And I believe now at this point in my life, I have barely scratched the surface of what I think I'll achieve in my life. And I'm certainly not bragging when I say that, because before that, I struggled with every last bit of self-confidence issues. And I'll give you a few examples, and then I'll tell you exactly how I was able to conquer this insecurity. First example is that when I was in school, in grade school before college, I was kind of the kid who wasn't popular but also wasn't weird. I was just kind of in the middle. And this was honestly more painful for me than being, let's say, a weird kid, because it's kind of like a spectrum in school. I don't know if anyone else can agree, but on one side of the spectrum, it's the popular kids who have a lot of friends. But on the other side, it's the weird kids who, ironically, also have a lot of friends. It's like these giant two groups at the end of this spectrum of popularity and unpopularity. But paradoxically, it's funny because the weird kids are popular amongst themselves because they all have a lot of friends because they're all the same. And the popular kids are all the same in their way. But then there's these like few students, like these single, these one students who are like in the middle, who are just like kind of dotted around. They don't really have their own group. And that was me. I was one of those students kind of in the middle. Now I had friends occasionally, but whenever I had friends, it was like no more than 4 for one season of my life. And back then the seasons of my life were like a grade. So like in 3rd grade, I might have had like 3 friends. But then in 4th grade, I have completely different friends. So like I never had like a friend group until like high school. So that was like pretty hard for me. And I always remember feeling unconfident in school. And then even growing up before college, I was unconfident about going to college, and I was nervous because I didn't feel like I was a person who could socialize at a college setting. And a lot of this I also just felt like I didn't deserve having money when I was younger, and that's still something I'm working towards. And I also was very, very unconfident with my physique before I started working out. Basically, I started working out when I was a sophomore in high school. So all that time in that grade school, when I was unconfident about not having a lot of friends, I was also unconfident about how I looked for a vast majority of like middle school. I would say is like the bulk of that. So like most of my life has been a lot of insecurity. Now, I'm not saying that I've been sad my whole life. I've had a lot of really good memories. A lot of good memories came from from being at home and being at my grandparents' house, because even though I didn't have a lot of friends at school, I still had my sister and my cousin. And us 3 hung out all the time, especially over the summer, like always. But I never had like friends come over to my house from school. Like I just didn't have that, which is fine because I had my sister and cousin. So for the vast majority of my life has been filled with insecurity and feeling like I didn't deserve friends or money, or, I didn't look good. I was also very introverted, so that was part of the reason why I struggled to make friends, is just, I felt like a weird kid. And so I was pretty deeply insecure for a while, but it was only until a few years ago, so I would say like mid-college, where I was able to finally beat this insecurity forever. And a lot of people started actually calling me arrogant for the way that I started behaving. Now, I didn't try to be arrogant. I didn't really talk. I still don't talk to a lot of people. The fact that I'm introverted hasn't changed, but I am so confident now, and I feel like I can do just about anything in life because of what I thought of And that was essentially figuring out what I believe the meaning of life is. And I believe that the meaning of life is to experience growth and not achievement. And I think believing that that's the meaning of life has helped me out a lot, because I can basically just say, oh, I feel like shit right now, but I'm going to grow because that's my goal for life, because that's what I think the meaning of life is. So the goal for life is growth, not achievement. And I'm going to give you an example. If you were to draw a circle when you were really little, and this circle is really, really small, and that circle is small because it signifies the amount of stuff you've achieved. When you're a kid, you don't have nothing, right? Obviously, you're just a kid. You don't have money, you don't have anything. So your circle's small. And so as you grow up, you get to high school, you maybe get a job, you make some money, you get good grades, you get into college, that circle's growing. And that growth of that circle is the goal in life. It's not to have the biggest circle, it's to have your circle move. That's the goal. For example, somebody working at McDonald's could be happy. We all know that person. They're like poor, working a job that most people would hate, but they're like insanely happy. And a good reason that could be is because maybe they were homeless 2 days ago, no job, living on the street, and now they have a job and they're able to save up to get a small apartment. Of course they're going to be happy. And that's because their circle got bigger. They grew in life. And that's why they were so happy. However, on the flip side, there's some billionaires who are depressed and hate their life. And it's because their circle might be big, but it's not moving. And that's why they're unhappy. And so this is all to say that when you are not growing, you are dying. I'll say that again. When you are not actively growing in your life, you are dying. That's what really, really old people who are getting close to death happen. Like, they don't grow anymore. They don't go out and do anything because they're on their deathbed, almost. So when you're not growing, even if you're in your 20s, it's almost as if evolutionarily and biologically in your brain, you must be dying because you're not growing, even if you're 20. That's why there's like that saying that most men are buried at 75, but they die at 20, or it's like 25 or something. That's because their circle stops growing in their 20s. Your goal should be to keep the circle growing. And so when your circle grows and you start to achieve more, you get evidence that you're achieving more and you're growing. And so as long as this circle keeps moving and you keep growing and achieving more and more and more, hence what I've been saying, you stay motivated. And that motivation to keep growing that circle is self-belief that you can keep growing the circle. And so if you grew the circle this far, you can do anything. You can keep growing the circle. There's no limit for you because of how far you've already grown it. So the final takeaway of this video is, in order to break out of the insecurity that you have right now, you need to start focusing on improving and growing. And through that, you'll gain confidence through the evidence of your circle getting bigger. And that circle getting bigger and that confidence and that motivation you get is literally your self-belief to keep growing the circle and achieve more. That is legitimately, that is the meaning of life. And if you can start learning to just start growing that circle little by little, even if it's just a little bit, as long as it's moving, that'll give you evidence that you're achieving and learning and improving, to eventually be able to convince your self-conscious, your subconscious, that you're going to achieve anything you want. And that is my guide to building an unbelievable amount of self-belief and how I did it. And I hope you found this valuable, and I wish you the best on your future. And I hope you enjoyed. Thank you for watching.